Welcome to On the Middle East, Al Monitor's podcast on the big and interesting stories in the region. My name is Ambryn Zaman, and today we'll be looking at the new wave of repression that is washing over Turkey. The government is poised to adopt a new law in the parliament, the so-called Agents of Influence law, that would criminalise unspecified acts that are said to be in line with the strategic interests or instructions of a foreign state or organisation, and that would threaten Turkey's security. That, anyway, is how the government is describing the proposed legislation. It's expected to be passed in the coming days, despite fierce opposition from rights groups, dealing a further blow to civil society and the media. At the same time, the government has ousted 4 democratically elected Kurdish mayors over the past week on thinly evidenced terrorism charges. With us here to discuss these grim developments is Emma Sinclair Webb, Turkey Director for Human Rights Watch. Welcome to our program, Emma, and thanks for making the time.
Great to be here, Ambryn.
So could you kindly explain to us what the likely impact of this law will be? And second, why did the government even feel it necessary to sort of even draft such a law when we already know that there are so many legal restrictions in place to address Turkey's supposed national security concerns?
Well, I think at this point we actually can't say what the implications of this law will be. And that is what's so worrying about it. The way the law is written is so vague as to basically encompass anything you like. And what it says is that those who commit crimes against the security or internal or external political interests of the state, or in the strategic interests or under the instructions of a foreign state or organization, can be sentenced to, and it then gives various different prison terms from 3 to 7 years, and that can escalate up if it's wartime, and it can go even further up if the person who's accused is somehow seen as working in a critical position in the state. So let's go back on that wording. I mean, it basically says, it doesn't actually define a crime for us. It doesn't tell us what the crime might be. And basically all laws need to be able to tell the public and the average person what they might get accused of and what they might have to do to get accused of it. But this law doesn't tell you what you would need to do to get to fall foul of it. And that's what's so worrying about it. It's in fact it refers to those who commit crimes against the security or internal, etc. of the state. So that's just an incredibly vague wording. And what it also spells is that the law isn't going to be used on its own. It's not just it doesn't tell you what the crime is. It's actually going to be used with other laws. And it then goes on to tell us that this is an offence that will be used with related crimes. So, for example, let's think about this. If you've been accused of insulting the president, and perhaps you work for a foreign organisation, the prosecutor could say, you've insulted the president and you've done it in the strategic interests of a foreign organisation or foreign state, and could add this crime into the mix. And that's a really horrifying prospect, because it means that this is actually an offence. It's an aggravated offence that can be added to any number of other crimes just to sort of make the penalty steeper. And it's a very, very vague expansion of the idea of espionage. It's offences against the security or political interests of the state, and this is under the espionage part of the penal code. But unlike other crimes of espionage, which of course all states have, this one just doesn't really tell us what we might do to commit a crime.
So, who do we think they're targeting here? Are they targeting journalists who work for foreign publications? Are they targeting NGOs who get foreign funding? Because this foreign element seems to be the sort of most striking aspect of this new law.
Yes, I think that's right. But, the reality is that in Turkey, lots of NGOs, lots of civil society groups get funding from foreign donors, be that the EU or private donors. And this is not illegal. This is very well audited. It's very well reported. It's very transparent. The government itself gets a lot of donations from foreign donors like the EU. So foreign funding isn't what this is about, and it doesn't criminalize foreign funding in any way. And I think that's a very important thing to point out. But yes, the connection with foreign organizations or, perhaps like, for example, it could be a journalist who works for a foreign news agency, but is a local journalist and works for the foreign branch of a news agency. The local branch, rather, of a foreign organization. That could be one possibility. It could be an international NGO, an international human rights organization. It could be because, presumably working in the strategic interests of a foreign organization to do work for an organization.
It could be you even, Emma.
It could be me. But I think, what we have here is no account of exactly whether it's going to target reporters, civil society, human rights groups, or just individuals, because an individual could find themselves potentially falling foul of this kind of law, I believe. But I think it particularly will strike fear into local civil society that gets foreign funding from different donors, be it private trusts or the EU, and that might make them particularly anxious about it. But they have no reason to be anxious because it's not illegal to get foreign funding in Turkey, and it's very well audited, all foreign funding already. And I just want to add here that this is what makes it, this is rather different from the foreign agent style laws that we see in Russia, in Georgia and other places, which are actually, they're different in that they're all having to designate themselves as foreign agents, to write on their websites, to present themselves as working under foreign influence. It's a kind of in a sense, you have to ostracize yourself. You have to declare yourself a kind of spy. Now, this law contains nothing of that. This law is just, it allows the prosecutor to decide that you're a spy.
So again, why are they doing this when, as I said, they have so much in place already that stifles free speech, criticism of the government, all of those things? What's the point?
I think it's really hard to know what the point is. I think, the government has said this basically fills a gap. They've said in their explanation of this law that, whereas regular espionage charges are all about sharing state secrets or obtaining state secrets and somehow tangibly getting hold of material or information, whereas this one is just so much vaguer. And they say they need it. They say that then they list all sorts of interests that could be affected, whether it's cultural issues, infrastructure, energy issues. All of these could be places where espionage or committing crimes against the security of the state takes place. I can't really answer your question, Amberin. We don't know why they have a vast arsenal of repressive laws ranging from terrorism laws right through to criminal defamation. And this is all through the penal code. There are multiple articles. So you can be accused of targeting a public official. If you criticize a public official, that falls under the anti-terror law. You can be accused of insulting the president. You can be accused of insulting ministers, spreading terrorist propaganda, praising crime and criminals. There are many, many, many versions of this, which journalists constantly fall foul of, and members of the public fall foul of too, when they post social media postings that are critical in some way of particular ministers or the government.
And of course, this is unfolding against the background of a fresh wave of repression against elected officials and elected Kurdish officials in particular. We've seen 4 mayors now ousted and replaced with administrators in one case. What is going on, especially given that the government is talking about trying to resolve the Kurdish issue once again?
Yes, absolutely. It's been the most frenetically busy week. Very typical for Turkey. The agenda keeps changing. New things keep happening. But the repression of local mayors is something we've seen twice before in the past, local Kurdish mayors. What the government did after the attempted military coup back in 2016 was to equip itself with powers to remove elected mayors by saying that anyone connected with terrorism can be removed from office. And basically this opened the way to them overtaking all the municipalities in the southeast of the country back in 2016 and 17. They appointed a total of 94 administrators or trustees in place of elected officials, which was a staggering thing to do and constituted a complete suspension of local democracy in the southeast, in the Kurdish southeast. They did it again a couple of years later in 2019. And now in 2024, we're having a third round of removal of mayors. So far, it's 5. We had one removed soon after the 31st of March local elections. In a very peculiar way, he was removed as the mayor of Hakkari. He was put on trial. The next day, he was convicted. So he is in prison and has got a huge sentence of 19 and a half years for being a leading member of a terrorist organization. Now, that's all at appeal. But the big question there, and this happened back in June, was, why did such a man with this facing these charges, was he allowed to run for office and to be a mayor, to be accepted as a mayor by the Supreme Election Council? But then there was a change of heart somehow, and they decided to suddenly go after him and stick him in jail.
One could ask that question about all these dozens of mayors that were allowed to run and then accused of terrorism and what have you. It is, as you say, very bizarre, especially since it's now become a pattern. If indeed these people are really terrorists, then you would think that the government would have a much more stringent vetting process to prevent such people from running again. So obviously there's more to this than, meets the eye, right?
There's more to this than meets the eye. And I think what the government has never understood about this is just how undignified the whole thing is for people in the southeast. It causes huge local resentment. The fact that, our opinion of who we want elected doesn't stand. Our chosen representatives don't meet the bar. They're terrorists. And this goes down very badly. It's happened, now happening a third time. And I think we've seen in the last week huge protests around this as well, which it's triggered an enormous reaction. But I think that what's very different about this time round is that for the first time, the government has done it to a CHP, main opposition party, mayor in Istanbul, in the most populous district of Istanbul, no less, which is Esenyurt. And Ahmet Özer, the mayor in question, he's a university professor, Kurdish, and seems to have been a candidate that was agreed between the main opposition CHP and the DEM party, the pro-Kurdish rights party. And he has been targeted with the most extraordinary accusations, which are that he, over many years and made telephone calls with people who themselves either had relatives or were themselves open under some kind of criminal investigation, which is a kind of ludicrous accusation, because it's like saying to somebody, if you talk to someone who possibly committed a crime, but we don't know if they did, then you yourself are a criminal. And that is, at the moment, the extent of the evidence against Ahmet Özer. There's a secrecy order on the file. They tried to get him out of prison, and that's been rejected on the grounds that there is compelling evidence there. But we haven't seen this compelling evidence yet, and we don't know what this is about. But it smells very fishy. It looks like a bogus terrorism proceeding against him. And we've seen so many of these. It's just a repeat
So why do you think it's extended to the CHP now? Why are they going after them?
I think, I think this gets into the heart of the sort of idea that they have of the way they want to solve the Kurdish issue and to somehow, I think, keep the CHP out of it. I think they're probably trying to drive huge wedges within the CHP itself to split the CHP in a way, because the CHP, carries different political interests within it. I don't think so far they've necessarily succeeded in doing that. I think what's happened is that it's been a huge backlash, because this is outrageous, and it of course raises the question of whether they're going to continue doing this, also aimed at the CHP. They did it first to the CHP, then they of course switched this week and removed 3 Kurdish mayors, one of whom is a very veteran Kurdish politician, very well known, Ahmet Turk. He's been removed twice before. It's extremely undignified again to see such a figure, a man who's all his life been interested in legal politics and dialogue and peace processes, targeted in such a way. But so I think it's a confusing.
But it also is very bizarre that it's happening at a time when the government claims it wants to solve the Kurdish issue. And as Ahmet Turk himself pointed out, how does that, make any kind of sense if you're on the one hand talking about peace and on the other hand escalating, dialing up the repression against the people you claim to be wanting to make peace with?
That's right. I mean, I think Ahmet Turk and others have talked about the government having, extending a hand on the one side, but having a cudgel in the other hand on the other side, and that's exactly how it is. This is a difficult thing to know. We have limited facts about what's really going on, but as a human rights organization, I think our role here is to very much point out that this kind of repressive instruments, like removing mayors, like bringing in expanded espionage laws, and really endlessly opening new criminal processes against people under various articles of the Penal Code and anti-terror law, these are a real impediment to any peace process. And if things go ahead, if there really is a process to solve the Kurdish issue in Turkey, there will be a lot of work will need to be done in looking again at the laws, looking again at the practices, tightening laws so that they are not used in this expansive way as a cudgel against political opposition and against people who say critical things of the government. All this has to change. We need a roadmap of lots of legal changes, lots of changes in practice, and a real shift in mentality about dealing with critical political opposition.
Well, this government has been in place for 22 years, and initially they did some amazing things, but what we've seen pretty much since, say, 2010 is just steady backsliding. And it's very hard to be optimistic, particularly given that so few Western governments seem to be putting any meaningful pressure on Turkey to change its behavior. So thank God that you're around, Human Rights Watch and other rights organizations who are keeping a record and trying to keep pressure on the government to change its ways. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Emma.
Thank you very much for having me.
And this brings us to the end of this week's show. Thank you for joining us, and do go to our website, www.kurdish.org, al-monitor.com for independent and in-depth reporting on the Middle East. Thank you and goodbye.